This is how to start a roast on the Ikawa Home. There's the one. And we've got the Ikawa Home app here on iPad. So I'm gonna open that up. And then I'm gonna flip the switch on the back of the Ikawa to turn it on. And it's going to connect to the app. So you can see there, it says add your beans, press go on the roaster. So I've got a profile here that I use for this Ethiopian bean I have from Sweet Maria's. But if you wanted to add a new bean, you can click this and it'll say scan a barcode, which will work if you're buying the Ikawa beans, or you can add your own coffee, and then you can put the information in, and then you can go to the library and find a profile for it. But what I'm going to do is use this profile I already have set up. So Ethiopian Keyanguji, that's what this coffee, oops, it's not in focus. That's what this coffee is. And here I have a light low Ethiopia profile, which is some of the things you can choose. They also have recommended, they have my recipes, and then you can find others. So if I want to do, let's say we'll do a filter medium, which isn't the one I used before, but here's the profile. And then it's got roast stages, and then you can send a roaster or you can edit it. So I'm going to edit it, and it's set to medium. So if I want to do a roast degree of, let's say light, so I'm going to do this for filter with a low development time. And then you can switch to graph editor if you want to actually edit this graph. But that requires a subscription, just as a heads up. But I'm going to do light, roast, low development time. I'm going to click save, and I'm going to create a new recipe so that I don't overwrite that standard one. And I'll just put in test for this. So now it's going to make that profile. It's added to the library. And now if I go to do send a roaster because I want to start the roast, now it says already on roaster. That means it's been loaded to the Ikawa. And now up on the top here, we've got this bean feeder. You open and close it. So if it's opened, the app will show you doser open. And when you close it, it will go to add your beans and press go. So we've loaded that profile onto the roaster. So now I'll take my beans as the hopper's closed. I'm going to dump these in here. This is 100 grams of this Ethiopian. This is a 100 gram roaster, so you see that fills up close to the top there. I've got my cup for the chaff with the little rubber seal, and I'll put that in there. And then when I'm ready to go, I dump the beans in by twisting this. And all those beans just went into the chamber. Then I'll close it back up and hit the button to start the roast. Now it's going to say over here which phase it's in. And eventually it's going to start the roast. So wait for a moment for that. I think it takes about 45 seconds to a minute, maybe a minute and a half to do the preheating. And there it's starting the roasting. And you can see on the graph here, the temperature is rising. You can hear the roaster. It's following the profile that's been set. Now as it's roasting through the profile, if it hits a temperature that you've noticed is your goal temperature, and you want it to go into the cooling cycle, you just click this button at any time. Otherwise, what it'll do is it will start based on the profile to do the cooling cycle. So if you want to stop it manually consistently based on the temperature, then you'll likely want to pick a profile that has a longer development time so that you can manually drop at whatever time or temperature you think is appropriate for the beans. So again, we're just going through the roast here. We're coming into 1.5 minutes. You can see the different stages of the roast based on there. And it's saying that we should expect the yellowing phase at 2.5 minutes. Let me set this at a little bit less of an angle. Got out the wrong stand, but it's all right. So here we can see as it's roasting, it's collecting the chaff in the little chaff chamber. Here we got our exhauster vents. There the hopper's closed, of course. And there's the coffee roasting in the roasting chamber with the hot air. This has got hot air coming out. Little to no smoke. I don't know that I would do this inside unless I had a externally venting, oven hood. I wouldn't do it with the hoods that are just like through your microwave with a little filter or whatever. But some people actually do roast this inside. I'm here in Florida where we've got beautiful weather to roast outside, especially in the winter. And we're still following the profile. We are at 3.5 minutes. So we're expecting to hit first crack around 5:20. This is the first time I've roasted on this profile, so I'm not exactly sure what to expect. You can see based on this light roast level with a low development, it's saying we should expect lively acidity, mild bitterness, and a juicy body. What other information do we have while we're waiting? Roast time of about 6 minutes. Slow, steady increase in temperature that begins to decrease before first crack. Creates a light roast with a low amount of development. Recipe is great for showcasing complex acidity in coffee. There's the flavor wheel. Acidity is in yellow there. Bitterness is in blue, and body is in red. And as you adjust these settings on the previous screen before we sent the profile to the roaster, these will all change, and so you can see as you're going through what element of the roast you're adjusting. Like I mentioned before, there is a graph editor option as a subscription on iOS where you can change this target graph and set multiple points for the roast profile to target. I have not messed around with that. But I roasted this Ethiopian Kayanguji a couple of weeks ago and roasted a light roast medium development. And I've been pulling that on espresso on my Argos, and it's been pretty good. I might like it a little brighter, but I prefer high clarity, so. We're still collecting chaff. I can smell the coffee. I could smell it a bit ago, and I forgot to mention that, but you can see it's starting to, it's getting pretty well browned in there. I'm not sure how exactly that's showing up on the camera, but I'm just recording on my phone here. You can really smell the coffee roasting. So we're getting towards the end of the profile here. First crack is hard to hear on this machine. because it's so well insulated with all of this plastic and glass. Also to note, this is slightly warm to the touch, not hot, perfectly touchable. I wouldn't touch the glass on top. That is going to be hot. This exhaust is reasonable to hold my hand there, but a little bit hot. The glass jars, they're double insulated. They don't get very hot. And it's got this cork piece to pull out. So here we're in the cooling cycle. You see the temperature is rapidly dropping. What it's doing is the heating element is off, and it's just rotating cold air from outside through it and pushing all the heat out to rapidly cool the beans. And what we'll do at the end here, as this roast finishes, we're at 6-7 minutes, so the cooling cycle started at 6:10. And again, if you wanted to start that sooner than 6 minutes 10, then you could click this button to initiate the cooling cycle. That'll stop the roast and cool it down. I think it also functions as a safety feature for if something gets out of whack, and you can click that and start the cooling and stop the heating element immediately. And once this profile has been loaded onto the roaster, you don't need to use the app anymore, unless you want to see the graph. So what I'll do here is I've got a second set. This does great on back-to-back roasts. The results are also very consistent. So we've got this going now. The chaff is being collected. What I'll do is I will, once this cooling cycle is finished and the machine stops, I'll load up the next roast and reinitiate this profile. Again, once the profile is on the machine, you don't need the app again to rerun the same profile over and over, even after you've restarted or turned this machine off. If you come back to it and you want to run the same profile, don't need the app or an iPad at all. I think this also works on iPhone, but there we go. So the roast is done. It says swap jars, press go on the roaster to eject the beans. So we'll do that. We'll take out the chaff jar. We'll put in the other jar, which is the bean collection jar. I think these work interchangeably, but I'll click the button to eject the beans. It spins up and gets those beans out of the chamber there. So that's all been ejected. Down to the catch cup. We'll pull this out. And then you can empty the chaff cup if you have something to empty it into. I don't at the moment. I forgot about that. But here's our roasted beans. I'm just going to dump these into here. Got a little bit of chaff still on the beans as well. They're pretty well cooled off. Here, let me dump some of these out just for visuals. It's a little dark out here on my patio. That's probably around 13% weight loss if I had to guess. I didn't bring a scale out with me for this, but either way, we've got our chaff cup. We'll put that back in, and then we can either reinitiate on the iPad here or just dump in and send it again, which is what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna dump those beans in there for a second roast. I'm gonna click the go button and it's gonna start another roast with that same profile. So it's gonna follow the same profile as it did before. Oops, I did not dump the beans in. So I should have dumped the beans in before I clicked go. So now I'm gonna click. I messed something up here. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn it off and turn it back on because I should have loaded the beans first. I'm sure that was giving me some kind of error for there not being beans in there. And now I'll start the roast. So the chamber cools off substantially. Because it cools the beans in the system. You don't need an external bean cooler for this. It just kind of works for you. All you really need is these 2 jars, and ideally something to put your roasted coffee into, because if you're going to go on back-to-back batches, you're going to need both of these to switch out between the chaff and the roasted beans at the end. Or I suppose you could use another container for your green and just dump the chaff into a container between each roast. I have these 3D printed cups that stack on top of each other, and they'll easily hold 100 to 100, maybe 200 grams of coffee. So this is going to roast again, and then you just go through the cycle. You can see it's back up on the iPad as well. Even though I didn't initiate it on the iPad, I did it on the machine. If you don't have an iPad for it to connect to, it will just roast the profile that's stored on the machine, even without the app.